What's up, peeps? This is Todd, and welcome back to my show. I have an awesome episode for you guys today because I have Casey Burns, who owns the channel Casey Burns Investing here on YouTube. So make sure to go subscribe to him. He has some awesome stuff about investing, personal finance, how to save money, make money, all that good stuff. Casey is also an officer in the Army, and he's just got a wealth of experience and knowledge. So welcome, Casey.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for the rousing review of my channel. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I found you because of your nonstop comment hustle on all of the personal finance channels in existence.
Well, yeah, pretty much everybody, every time somebody replies to one of my comments, they're like, "Hey, didn't I just see you on Dave Ramsey?" I'm like, "Yeah, you probably did." But it's a little obnoxious, but it does work. So
It absolutely works.
yeah, I was a little bit reluctant to do it at first, but then I ended up taking Graham Stephan's YouTube course, and he basically was like, yeah, if you're a small channel, YouTube's not going to recommend you much. You pretty much have to recommend yourself. So that's what I've been doing, and it's pretty good. It's a pretty good hustle. It gets about anywhere between like 12 to 25 subscribers a day. So, and I do appreciate the people that come through because they, you'll get messages that are nice, like, hey, I really like this really changed the way that I view the world, or the way that I view my finances, or the way that I view what I'm doing in life. So it can be obnoxious, but then those good times kind of offset it a little bit. So
Yeah, well, it was funny because I saw on my recommended page there was a Dave Ramsey video that was maybe published 4 hours ago, like 4 hours before I saw it. So I watched the video and I go in the comments and I see Casey Burns commented like 3 hours ago. So you were like right on it. And that happens across like lots of videos. So good on you. And anyone watching, Casey Burns Investing is his YouTube channel. He's got a lot of great stuff, putting out some real content that a lot of YouTubers are afraid to put out. And we'll probably talk a little bit about that today. But what if you tell the people a little bit about your background, like why personal finance is important to you and your sort of goals moving forward?
so I would say that my background. So I came from a pretty well off family, which is a little bit different. I'm going to cut some part of the story out. There's obviously the story is on my channel, but basically what happened was went to college, kind of goofed off there. Parents ended up kicking me out of college, so I had to figure out how to pay for it myself, which was basically that was the point where I went from being like kind of childish and being a kid to having to say like, all right, I'm going to put on my big boy pants and be an adult. Went out and joined the Army. So that's how I paid for my college. The Army paid for my college, and as well as a little bit of student loan. Basically, fast forward through that a little bit, ended up becoming an Army officer. It's about January 2018, and between my credit cards, my car, and my student debt, I was about 90,000 debt. But fast forward here to 2 years, basically like I got really into the personal finance space, ended up starting the channel, and started these net worth updates. And it's looking like by the time January rolls back around 2021, my 3 year mark, have gone from about negative 90,000 to market dependent, probably about 110,000 or something like that, 110. So it's really been a blessing. And it's really important to me just because I've realized that a lot of success in life, whether it be financial or just in general, it's really behavioral. It really is. And people don't like to hear that. People don't like to take ownership of their life, but it really is behavioral. But that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, well, that is awesome. Congrats on your success. I mean, to go from negative 90,000 to positive 120,000 is crazy. I mean, you basically made a $250,000. You bridged that and saved that. Not only did you make it, you saved it in, what did you say, 3 years?
Yeah, so it'll be about 3 years. Just from aggressively paying off debt to selling stupid cars to living with a roommate for the whole time to just making a bunch of sacrifice from things like I actually did the math on it, and if you assume that I made $25 an hour, I think it was something like I forget. I want to say it was in the neighborhood of like 14 to 16 hours a day or something like that, or I think it was more like 12 to 13 hours a day I basically spent working for the past 3 years. So it really is, like, not to pat myself on the back, it really is an accomplishment, and it really is a big choice, in my opinion, to do that. Like, people say they can't do it, but it's been rough, but you can do it if you choose to do it, is my
Yeah.
message.
That's
now.
incredible. So you basically saved, or you paid off 90,000 and saved 120,000 just a couple of years. So it's essentially like $250,000 that you like just dedicated to your mission, to your cause. And you mentioned you live with a roommate. So do you like rent an apartment and you have a roommate there? Do you own your home and rent it out? Like how is that structure?
So basically, after in the reserves, I'm not sure exactly how it works on active duty, but obviously that could be looked up. But in the reserves, after 6 years in the reserves, you can get a VA loan. So I ended up getting into my house for free. And I was doing my little Excel sheet to figure out like how much, what is this going to actually look like? Basically projecting, you can take your math and project yourself out into the future. And I said, this is going to look a lot better if I live with a roommate. So ended up getting a 2-bedroom house, townhouse, and I'm living with a roommate now. So finances look a lot better because of it. And I'm really glad that I made that decision, because I was going to say, hey, I just need to live by myself, and I think that would have been bad in many ways. But yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, so that's incredible. So first of all, thank you for your service. Serving our country is why we
Thank
have a
you.
lot of the freedoms we have today. And I think a lot of people watching will appreciate that. And you were able to use a VA loan to get into a house. You bought a 2-bedroom place and you decided to house hack and have a roommate, basically paying half your mortgage.
Right. Exactly. So right now they're paying 775. The mortgage itself minus the HOA is 1315. So they're paying just over half of the mortgage itself. Like obviously if you get rid of the HOA, then they'd be paying over half of the mortgage, and at a fair price to them. Like, if I was in their shoes, I don't charge them for bills or anything. I just charge them a flat 775. Like I would take that deal if I was in her shoes. So yeah.
Totally. Yeah, that is incredible. So, okay. So here you are, you're a young guy, you own a home, you paid off all your debt, you have close to $120,000 net worth, which is just insane and it's awesome for someone your age. So, I'm just going to ask the blunt questions that people are afraid to ask and answer. You're not afraid to because you do it on your channel all the time. Um, when people say, oh, well, you can't get ahead because of race or gender or sexual orientation or whatever it is. And there's a lot of that out there today. What's your response to that? Because you seem to have just made some choices that put you in a position to succeed.
So yeah, I find it very weird that my message offends so many people, because I think that a lot of people, there's like the right and the left both think that each other are racist. And I think that there's one faction of people that will say they're talking about the genetic component, right? Like racially white is better than black. And then there's another faction that will say, the cultural component, or like, they're pointing at the culture, like black culture better than white culture. But I think that there's kind of a center course. It's like, well, certain behaviors are better than other behaviors, which is a very non-controversial thing to say, but somehow it still offends people. Like in my case, for me, living with a roommate, I would say is better financially than not living with a roommate. And I kind of try to emphasize that on the channel, that like, hey, no matter what's going on with your life, I know you've been through a lot of tough stuff. I know there's single mothers out there. There's, people of all different races and genders. But if you do certain things, it's proven time and time again, which is what I'm trying to prove with my net worth update series, that if you do certain things, you will succeed. And it doesn't matter what color your skin is. It doesn't matter what you got going on downstairs. If you do these things, you will succeed. That's my message. And sometimes it come off as crass, but I don't know. I like that a little bit. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that I think that's great. And I think you're right. And the problem is that it's very easy for people to get upset with men like you because you tell the truth. And
Right.
a lot of the times the truth is inconvenient because it'll totally shatter this image or identity that someone may have. And I was reading this statistic about poverty and basically talking about how there are certain ways to avoid poverty and where it will work with like almost 99% certainty. And I think the list was, if you graduate high school, meaning you don't drop out of high school, you wait to have kids until you're married, and you wait to get married until you're 20. if you do those three things, there is a 99% certainty that you will never be in poverty. And all of those things can be choice. And I understand there are rough circumstances. I get that. I understand that. But most of those things are within your control. And it's not that difficult to do those three things.
Right. Is that a cat behind you?
Yeah.
I did not know you had a cat. I was
don't
like,
have a cat. So
okay.
this is my sister-in-law is staying with me right now, and she has the cat,
Okay.
and the cat likes to wander, and it found its way over to my bed
Into a podcast.
into a podcast. So this is Winnie Winster, the cat. She is on the podcast today. It's only been day 2, and she's already thrown up in my room once.
Nice.
So yeah, so I'm gonna have to get some brownie points with the wife for letting her sister's
like,
cat live in my bedroom.
Nice. Hopefully we can get some follows on that cat or something. I don't know. I was like, that's not.
Everybody out there, smash the like button for Winnie the cat. Winnie Winster. I don't want to say this too loud because it'll hurt her feelings, but she's the fattest cat I've ever seen. She's huge. She's like a sack
thick.
of potatoes.
You're supposed to say thick.
Shame on me for fat shaming Winnie the cat. But yes, that is not my cat. It is my sister-in-law's cat. But anyway, yeah. So going back to what we were talking about, I think you're right on the money there. Where no matter what your circumstances are, there are certain decisions you can make to be successful, and you're proof of that. You've paid off all your bad debt. You're working your way up. You're active in the military. You know, you have other things going on like your rental house, your YouTube channel. But it's because you're deciding to do that. And most people don't want to make that decision because it's easier to complain.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's funny because I think about, projecting out into the future. I think about like myself on, going and talking to somebody and like this whole concept of privilege. Like, obviously, none of us have the same starting point. That's something that, in my opinion, should not be remedied with government solutions or should not be. Nobody's going to have the same starting point. Nobody has the same advantages. I'm not as tall as you are. You're not the same level of wealth as me, but to try to level those things out is not the move. But like, I just think I project out and I'm like, okay, once I do reach this success, it's kind of crazy to me that I know that people are going to discredit it because they're like, oh, well, you had this, and this going from you. Like I could literally come back from deployment and have somebody sit there and tell me how privileged I am. I could be on deployment and have somebody tell me how lucky I am. And for a while, I was kind of angry about that. And I was like, no, like if you work hard, you can get there and people should understand that. But then you realize that there's just kind of this faction of there's certain just tormented souls that they want to be a victim. And then that's just kind of how it's going to be. Like no matter what you say that you've gone through, no matter what you've persevered through, or no matter what they are capable of, they've already told themselves in their mind that they are not capable. And that the reason why other people have things is because they were handed it. And so it just kind of is what it is with that. Like, I honestly don't know what to do about that. Kind of just have to leave those people alone, let them be, I guess.
Yeah, no, you're right. There will always be negativity out there. There are always going to be haters. It's funny. So I am in a position now, call it privilege, call it luck, call it success, whatever you want to, where most of the people that I went to school with, I started behind them just because of my upbringing. I came from a mother who struggled and we were a poor family. And now, my net worth is in the multi-millions, and that's far beyond what many of my peers have at this point. I'm still a young guy. And I worked like crazy to get here. Similar to you. You said you're doing the calculation, working 13 hours a day. When I first started my sales career, I was working even a little bit more than that. I don't work 17 hours a day now, but that's what I started off. And so I have a lot of people that I came up with, and they like to tell me how lucky I am, but they partied, they partied for the first half of their 20s. They're still partying. So it's not even, now their 20s aren't even over. And it's like, while they were partying on a Friday, I was working. And while they were sleeping in on a Saturday, I was pounding the pavement looking for the next property to buy. And while they were at the clubs, or the bars, or smoking weed, or playing video games, or having fun, or whatever it was, I was just developing a marketing strategy and working on my business. So like, yes, sure. I'm not so arrogant to say that I'm not lucky. I am lucky, but also I worked my ass off. And if everyone puts in the work early, especially, I mean, the work you can do in your 20s can set you up for the rest of your life.
Right, because your energy level and everything. It's like one thing that I've only said it to a couple people, but to some extent, even when I was in college, I was kind of in this same kind of grind mode. Because when I was in college, I was doing track and field, I was doing ROTC, I was doing a biology major, which was one of the harder STEM majors at UW. And it's like, it was funny because I would miss PT sometimes or physical training in ROTC, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're so lucky!" Like, and I was just like, the thought that went through my mind was like, "How about you follow me for 1 week and do everything that I do, and then we'll decide who's lucky." Because what their schedule looked like was wake up, go to PT, go upstairs, take a nap, go to class maybe, and like that was it, you know. Whereas I was like, I'm practicing, I'm going to PT, like I have a much harder major than you. I think they were majoring in like political science, not to diss political science because people can do well with political science, but whatever. But yeah, I just feel like that people unless which is one thing that I feel like is valuable about something like reading biographies, until you've taken a walk in somebody's shoes that is successful, or you understand, whether you want to call it the science of success or just like what that person actually had to do to get to where they got. It's kind of backwards to say that they're lucky. Like if you can, like to some extent, you can kind of create your own luck, right? Through that work ethic. But yeah, anyway.
No, yeah, I think that's brilliant, and I think you raised some really valid points. So, okay, so you're a successful guy. You have a bunch of money in the bank. You paid off all your debt. You did it the right way, and it sounds like you didn't get like a big inheritance or anything like that. You said your parents were well-to-do, but it's not like one of your parents passed away and you got millions of dollars. It didn't happen. So, as someone who just saved their money and became successful that way, what do you think about this idea of like redistributing wealth in the name of equality?
You mean in terms of like reparations or taxes?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess both, and maybe you'll have a different answer for him. But just this idea that like, oh, Casey, you have $120,000. It's not fair that you have that, and that some people have zero. Some people have negative. Actually, some people have minus 50,000 because they have a bunch of credit card debt. So we're going to take some money from you and spread it across so that it's more even and equal for more people.
I think that depending on how you phrase what you just said, you either land in reality or you land in fantasy. Because in what I would consider reality, money is just a proxy for the exchange of goods and services, right? So if you're taking my money, you're essentially taking away what I would have done with, my goods and services. If you control the money, you control the goods and services, right? So if let's say you have zero and I have, I don't know, a million, right? That means that essentially you work for me, right? But if I worked for somebody else, done something of value to them, then they give me the money back. And then that means that I control the goods and services. So if we take the money out of the equation and we go back to just trading pigs and all that stuff and like cows and whatever in houses and things like that, the only way to collect taxes at that point would be to show up to somebody's house and literally take their stuff. So like, obviously we need taxes for certain things. Like there's certain things that would be in both of our best interest to not maintain, such as the military, right? Or like the police. It would be in both of our best interest to not maintain the police or property rights because, maybe if I get away with it, maybe I won't get robbed. I can have a little bit more money. That's where I feel like the government can step in. But as far as like, people think that there's like this wage fairy that just rains down wages from above or something like that. Like if you do something for me, I decide how much I want to pay you, rather than like wages are set, or like the language is what I'm trying to get at. Like people will say wages are too low. Like, you mean the amount that I want to pay him to do this thing, that's too low? Like that's a consensual relationship. And then there's a third party coming in called the government that's, trying to say, hey, we think that you're not paying them enough to do that. I think that, so yeah. And then in terms of reparations, I think that like, as far as the legacy of slavery, um, the legacy of slavery is not just a US based thing, right? So there's a legacy of
How
slavery
dare you,
worldwide.
Casey? How dare you tell the truth about how slavery's been all over the world?
Yeah. So like, who are we going to give reparations to? They're giving reparations to Jewish people in Germany. That's, it's great. I think that was a horrible thing that happened to them. And, that was very recent. But there's still slavery going on today. And there's also like the whole idea that, like you said in one of your shows, people are incredibly rich here in this country. So like to redistribute because you feel like somebody has too many Lambos and you've got like, what, even if it's project housing, you've got a house, you've got a car, you've got enough like to redistribute that. It's I don't even want to say virtue signaling. It's buying votes is what I would say. That was a long-winded answer, but
But it
yeah.
was a great answer. And I think you're right. And actually, it's funny. I want to touch upon that too. This is a very controversial thing that you and I have just said, but I will say it again. Um, Slavery isn't just something that white people did to black people. There were slaves all over the world since the beginning of time. There were slaves in Africa 2,000 years before any African saw a white person. Now,
Right.
I don't want to make light of anything. Obviously, slavery of any kind in any time period was horrific, horrible, and shouldn't happen again. To your point, it's still happening today in other countries. But even at one point, white people were slaves. I mean, Vikings were white, and they would conquer a village and enslave other people, and the people they conquered were white, and they'd take them as slaves. So, yes, I agree with you there. If you do reparations, who gets it? Who pays it? Because at some point, you can pretty much go back to any sort of race, and at one point, every race was a slave, being enslaved by somebody else. At one point, it's like, yeah, that there was. I mean, there were slaves in Egypt thousands and thousands of years before the East India Trading Company.
Right. And another issue that I take with it is what happens to the dollar if we just, I mean, we're already printing trillions of dollars. What happens to the dollar if we print this money and just give it out to minority populations? What happens to race relations? We already see terrible race relations. What happens when if you take the actual dollar, the money part of the situation out of the equation? What happens when I go to my white neighbor's house and I say, "Hey, give me your stuff. Oh yeah, by the way, I love you. Good race relations." Like, what happens when the dollar is devalued and the people who hold dollars are the poor, right?
Mm-hmm.
You with your real estate portfolio, I think you said like 6 houses or something. Myself with just my house, like since I bought my house 2 years ago, my house has already gone up in value. I think it's $19,000, right? So they printed for the poor, they printed $1,200 stimulus check. And in the same time, like I've gotten almost $20,000 in appreciation because they keep on basically distorting the market, right? If they wouldn't have backstopped people's rents, which it's terrible, like that's awful. I feel like this is kind of a different situation with them also telling us to stay inside, like you can't work. But the point being, if you backstop people's rents, you pay it for them. Essentially what you're doing is you're taking rent prices that are actually too high because they shouldn't be getting paid if people don't have the money to pay them. And you're maintaining those rent prices. The houses are valued on the rent prices. So you're maintaining the high values of those houses. Therefore, poor people cannot afford houses. So like, it's this thing where like, okay, I'm going to buy votes with this, but it's also like stabbing the poor in the back, like, I don't know. It's a complex situation. It's hard to talk about with people without them getting very emotionally involved in it and
Oh,
thinking about it objectively.
yeah, I can already feel the rain of dislikes this video is going to get. But the thing is, I don't think there's not a whole lot of people that are being real about this topic. And this is like, people need to hear this because you're absolutely right. You are a successful guy. You're a very intelligent guy. You get on the real estate business, and just by virtue of being in real estate, your net worth increased by 20,000 when poor people got a one-time check of $1,200. And
Right.
it's not necessarily even the fault of the poor people who got those stimulus checks. It's just like, because you're aware of financial literacy, you have this idea, and which, by the way, is not taught in schools, which is a complete failure on the system's part. But because you know this stuff, you you're making so much more money just by virtue of being in the game than someone who just
Right.
doesn't even know where to start or where to go or how to get there.
Exactly. And I think I've given this in a video before, this analogy. It's almost like if you knew there was like a golden waterfall, just right over there, right? And just because you know that, you go hold a bucket under it, and you're not very smart. You don't have to be very smart. Just literally because somebody said, "Hey, go stand over there." You just made 20 grand,
Hmm.
right? Like I didn't have any money to buy the house. By the way, you can get a USDA loan. I'm sure you know about this. I'm talking to the people right now, obviously, but there's ways to get into a house for very little to no money down. I have a video about 11 ways to get into a house for very little to no money down. Literally, if you would go stand under that waterfall of gold, you would catch some. And it's not rocket science. Like I will be the first person to say that I'm not very like highly intelligent, like Ben Shapiro, like I'm not that encyclopedia brain type dude, but it's literally as easy as just saying, "Hey, go stand over there and you'll make more money." Like, okay, I will. That's it.
Right. Yeah. You can't necessarily predict how much someone will make, but you can by certainly say, yeah, you'll do well if you do this. If you do these few things, and one of them being investing in real estate in, a market that's maybe even undervalued, so it has the opportunity for more appreciation, and also high rental demands. I mean, you're going to do well, and you've done well, and I've done well. So let me switch gears and ask you a couple of different questions just to get your opinion on it. And I know that it doesn't necessarily mean that an opinion by virtue cannot be right or wrong. It's just an opinion. But what would you say, in your opinion, in your experience, are some problems that are facing underprivileged communities, like the real problem? Because I think you're right. Politicians try to buy votes like, hey, if you vote for me, we're going to tax the wealthy and we're going to give you more money. But that seems to be like a putting a band-aid on a broken leg sort of fix. What's
Right.
actually going on in these communities, and why do they continue to suffer? And I don't know, does it have more to do with culture than any other reason? Or what's your take on that?
So I would say that in some ways I'm kind of, I don't know. I consider myself like kind of a, not to use the word rugged individual, whatever. I kind of consider myself like against the idea of collectivization, but it's very natural um, to basically do what's in your environment. So I think you could call it cultural, but you say that and people get offended. But I think that it's like, if I talk to you, which we've become pretty good friends. If I converse with you all the time, um, I'm going to probably do things that are pretty similar to what you do. Right. So I think what you see is that these people that live in these areas, first of all, they don't have a lot of opportunities within that area. It's hard to operate a business for various reasons, including, crime rates and things like that. It's hard to operate a business within those areas. So there's not very many opportunities. Also, ownership. Um, it's if you don't own where you live, rent prices would just drive you right out. So you're kind of just become this transient group. But to an extent, I mean, there's some systemic issues going on, I would say. But it's also like just this natural human tendency that we have to behave like people around us. I mean, I remember going to visit some of my family members, in the bad neighborhoods when those existed in Seattle. And, the daily activity was like go out, like smoke, sell drugs, go play basketball, play video games. And just like those are just the run of the mill hood activities. Like that's just how it was. And if you weren't going to be a ball player and you weren't going to be an actor or you weren't going to make it big, you were going to work at some menial job. And that was just kind of the mindset. Right. So I think that it's kind of like you can only see what you kind of perceive to be possible. And when you start to expand your circle to people who are much more successful, I think that you start to see that you can do much more. So if I don't even know that something's possible, I'm not even going to try for it. Like if I can't make it to the NBA in certain communities, like I think that is what a rich person is, a person who, and it's kind of like, yeah, it's hard to say it, but like our highest aspirations in those communities is like to go work for somebody white who has a lot of money to pay us for doing thing you know, and I think that's what I saw when I was in those communities was we didn't own the businesses, we didn't own the real estate, and there was no opportunity, right? And we couldn't see the opportunity that was outside or within there. So that's what I see.
Right. No, that was a phenomenal answer. And I mean, I'm learning a lot from this conversation just in talking to you. And we've talked a lot before, and I feel like I learn something new every time we speak. But that's a really good point. You know, even growing up for me, I was kind of on the opposite end of that. I grew up in a hick town, so it was poor, certainly, but like you know where I'm from, there was this area called Port Angeles, and the rough parts of Port Angeles were ghetto, but it was white ghetto. It was like trailers, and you know just like a totally different vibe, but the same sort of message where to those people, the idea of success, like the highest point you could get, would be to go work for somebody else and have like a comfortable wage like that was like, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to so many people were like, yeah, I want to join a roofing company, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with joining a roofing company, don't get me wrong, but like nobody had the idea like I want to own a roofing company, you know, or I want to
Right.
own assets that produce an income. And I think if you can branch out from that, I mean, you've just seen that for you owning an asset, boom, net worth $20,000 higher just by virtue of owning an asset. And I, you know, I've seen similar growth with my real estate and businesses. So it is just an interesting mind shift. The other thing too that I think is important to mention is that not everybody wants to be an investor or an owner of a company, and that's okay. Like if that's your choice, that's okay. The only thing is the way to build true long lasting wealth. I know of no other way than to acquire assets, whether they're companies or real estate or securities that pay dividends. I know of no other way to build long lasting wealth other than to acquire assets. And if you don't want to do that, that's totally fine, but you'll probably work until the day you die.
Right. And I think that a lot of the issue within I wouldn't say the Black community or just poorer communities in general is that I think that there's a lot of disdain for the system of capitalism because they're missing the investor side. They're missing the investor side, and they're missing the ease of access to that side. Not necessarily the real estate part, but the stock part, right? Which is why I make sure to always show the dividend portfolio in my videos, because it's like, hey, this isn't that much. Like right now, I think it's sitting at about like $3,000. Like a lot of people have $3,000, and I think right now it's producing like $25 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So like when I drive by those companies and I see people walking in and spending money, I'm like, okay, I'm going to make $25 this month. And that's just such a it's such a mindset shift from just going like, for example, I own some shares in Marlboro. So when I see somebody walk up to the counter and buy some cigarettes, I'm like, hey, some of that's coming to me. Like you feel like you're an owner in the US economy, right? So a lot of people, somebody who would say, go and wreck these big public businesses, these big billionaires, they think that the billionaires own the entire company when really the country owns the company.
Mm-hmm.
And people's 401k owns the company. And they don't understand that it's almost like a big brother system in that way, because once you pay back in as an investor enough, the economy basically supports you. So like you could call it a little bit of like Stockholm syndrome, but I don't mind being overworked by my boss anymore, because I realize that, hey, I own some stock in the company. So my hard work is actually coming back to me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm working this hard, and we have this American system of capitalism that works as few workers to do as much as possible, you are benefiting from that if you're an investor. So I think that that was really a mindset shift as far as like not liking capitalism per se. So
Right. And I think the important thing to know is whatever we go through, whether it's a pandemic or a recession or a Republican president or a Democratic president, like whatever it is, rich people will always come out ahead. And I've been
yeah,
trying to push that point through. It's very controversial. People get incredibly offended. And I'm like, look, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying this is the reality. And so let me teach you how to get rich. I mean, that's pretty much what my
yeah.
channel is about, is personal finance and how you can do it too.
And I think it's to like rephrase what you're saying. It's kind of being rich is more of a disposition. It's like if I go to AMPM right now and I hand my money across the table, who's getting richer, right?
Hmm.
The guy on the other side who's selling me the drink or whatever. That's it. That's really it. It's just being a producer, a seller, and saying like, hey, I'm going to own a piece of this company so that when people go and buy things, then I'm getting paid, rather than saying, hey, I'm just going to go work for somebody and then I'm going to go spend all of my money at all of these businesses. And where does my money go? I don't know. It's just kind of realizing that there's another side to that transaction. And if you put yourself on the side of that transaction, you realize, hey, maybe the system's not so unfair. Maybe I'm
Right.
just on the wrong side of it, you know?
Yeah, and I think you're right in that if you're looking at a situation and you think to yourself, well, this is as good as it gets, then there's really no incentive for you to save or invest because you can't see the forest through the trees. And I had this experience. I may have told you this story before, but we'll say it again for the folks listening here. And I don't know if I've told you this, but I was at the barber shop getting my hair cut, and my barber was talking to me, and he was so proud of himself. And he said that he had saved the most amount of money he'd ever saved in his entire life. His bank account was the highest it has ever been. And I was like, that's incredible. Like, good for you. I didn't even ask what the amount was. I didn't want to be rude or nosy, but I was like, just the fact that you know that is amazing. And then he told me
Right.
the amount. And he said, yeah, I'm so excited. For the first time in my entire life, I have $7,000 in the bank. And I was like, that's phenomenal. Congratulations, brother. Like that is incredible.
Yeah.
The next thing he said broke my heart because he said, yeah, and it's great because the chain that I want is 7,200. So this man, my barber, who lives on $25 at a time, because that's what I pay him to cut my hair. He maybe does at the best day he can do 10 cuts in a day, has finally saved $7,000. And once he gets 200 more dollars, he's going to take every penny and he's going to go buy a gold chain so he can flex and look cool and do all these things. And my heart sank sitting in this barber chair because here I am with 6 houses and a multi-million-dollar net worth, collecting tons of money every month in rental income. And I'm just like, man, this is as good as it gets for him. Is that it? A $7,000 gold chain? I would never in a million years think to spend 1,000 or yeah, even $1,000, but let alone 7,000 on a gold chain. And I own 6 freaking houses. You know what I mean? And it's just
Right.
like, but to him, that's as good as it gets.
Right. And this, yeah, like you said, it's just, it's all about perspective. Like that's kind of, I mean, to no fault of my parents necessarily. Cause I mean, they are investors. They've got properties, they've got their own stock portfolios and things like that. But that was kind of, I mean, I call it being like a financial child, right? Like when you're a kid, you get some money, you go buy some candy, right? You save up. And then like for me, I bought a pocket bike when I was a kid. Like that was pretty awesome. No regrets there. I basically was a kid with a car at that point, but it could do like 35 miles an hour. It was awesome. But like, yeah. So I just, that's kind of what I see as well. Like $7,000 is enough so that you could lay a foundation down, right? Like you could max your Roth, or you could put that into a business would probably be even better. Or you could, one thing that I've thought about making a video about is that if people like the Xbox and the PS4 just came out, right? So
Mhm.
if people took that amount of money and put it into financial education books, they would become millionaires, right? Just because they would learn like, oh, this is how people move. Like when I read Millionaire Next Door and Rich Dad Poor Dad, I realized like, wow, I'm doing a lot of things completely wrong, completely backwards. And the things that they're describing are not rocket science. It's not hard,
Mhm.
right? So, but anyway,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned earlier on this episode that you bought the Graham Stephan YouTube course, and
yeah,
you could have gone and spent that on a new Xbox, or whatever. I don't know what the cost of the course was, but I imagine it was something similar. But instead, you put it into learning, and now you have this YouTube channel that's making you money each and every month.
exactly. It's great. It's been about a year and 4 months now, and we've made $100. So that's the entrepreneur life for you right there.
There you go.
I don't
But
even want to calculate that hourly rate, but
don't you dare. Yeah, no, you'll cry yourself to sleep, but that's where it starts. And I was talking to a guy recently, another YouTuber out there by the name of Spencer Cornelia. I don't know if you've seen his stuff. Um, I think he has a great channel. And I don't feel bad about saying this because he makes it public. He puts this out on his videos. After 5 years of his YouTube channel going, he had 250 subscribers. And I don't know if he'd made any money at that point. But now, I think this is year 6, maybe year 7. He makes $10,000 a month on his channel. And so
Wow.
he just grinded it out for 5 years, making no money with less than 1,000 subscribers, less than 500 subscribers for that matter, and now $10,000 per month. And this came in really handy because he did lose a really good job. He lost a really good job, but he has this YouTube channel, this asset that's paying him $120,000 per year, and it's only going up.
Right. It's like that. It's like that whole tomato plant, or the, the I forget. I don't know what's the guys who like busting up stones. Like the whole like meme of, you hit it 100 times, but it's not the 100th time that broke it. It's all 99 before it. Like people don't really see that. Like I've only been monetized for a month of the 1 year and 4 months, and like, yeah, the $100 is like spread out over all those other years. So we'll
Mm-hmm.
have to see how it goes. Like last month was $68. This month is already past $68. So we'll have to see
There you
where it
go.
goes.
Yeah, and let me put this out there too, is you didn't make this YouTube channel out of desperation. You have a really good job. You're an officer in the military. You have a house that you're renting out part of it, and you did this channel as something extra. And
Right.
most people don't want something extra. They want to party and hang out. And again, I'm not even saying there's anything wrong with that. If that's what makes you happy to party every weekend and have no money, then you do you. It's when people complain about why their life sucks, but they don't do anything to change it. That's when I'm like, okay, well, let's talk. Let's figure out what's going on and see what's happening, and maybe we can fix something there.
Right. I have a question for you, actually. I've been wanting to ask you this.
Yes.
Might as well do it live.
All right.
So I kind of struggle with this because like even I try it like with work-life balance, because I like to work so much that it's like if I was left to my own devices, I would work all the time. Like, and then people will invite me to things, and it's like I struggle to find that balance of like, okay, I should probably have friends because that's good for your mental health,
Hmm.
and like relationships and everything like that. And obviously you're married, you have been in the relationship game for longer than me, but how do you balance that? Because I mean, I know you're a guy who likes to work a lot, and it seems like your wife is very supportive of that and things like that. But how do you guys get through that?
That is a great question, and I will admit I have let a lot of relationships, friendships, slide, certainly,
Right.
and it is entirely my fault. I will admit that 1,000%. Um, I had some of the guys, that I roll with, or that I used to hang out with in college, great guys, like wonderful human beings and really close. And they would ask me all the time, "Hey, let's hang out this weekend. Let's go to the bar. Let's do this. Let's catch a ball game." And I would say, "No, I can't. I'm working on my business. I can't. I'm going to tour real estate. I'm developing this marketing strategy. I don't have time." And over the years, the invitations just slowed down, and now the invitations don't come at all. And I was actually not too long ago, long enough ago, I guess. I was hanging out with my group of friends, and it was the first time I'd seen them in a very long time. We were having a great time. We were, eating good food, having nice drinks, watching the Seahawks, laughing, joking, like all this wonderful stuff. And what happened was they all started to make a plan for the next weekend. And they didn't do it on purpose. It wasn't out of malice or, to be mean. But even though I was sitting at the table, I was left out of that plan. They were all talking about what they're going to do this next coming weekend. And it's not that they didn't want me there. It's that they didn't think of me because they knew I would say no. And
Right.
that was like, oh shit. You know what I mean? Like, so I definitely think there is a balance. Finding that work-life balance is huge. I have made my wife cry on numerous occasions. I mean, there was a time where, earlier on in our relationship, it was Valentine's Day, and I was like, I'm sorry, I can't I can't spend time with you today. I'm working. And she was furious and, just crying and just all this terrible things. And I was probably working till 11 o'clock at night that day. And it was all in the name of being in a position where I could build us a great life. So I don't necessarily regret the choices that I've made. I don't know if I believe in regret, but I will say it is a balance. I'm getting better now. And now that I'm in a point where the whole reason for doing this is so I could retire at 30. And if I can retire at 30 and I can take care of my family, well, that means I have all the time in the world now to go hang out with friends if they'll still have me. So, but yeah, I know that was a very long-winded response, but it is a huge challenge because I'm so driven, I'm so motivated, and I have let a lot of important people, I've let them down. Being completely honest, I've let them down. And so this sort of next phase in my life, being a good husband, I want to have kids someday, so being a good present father, being a good friend, that's going to be my priority. And I'm so blessed, though, that I've built up this foundation of assets and companies that will pay for the rest of my life that I don't have to go work anymore. And so it's definitely a trade-off.
Right. And that's what you said towards the middle there was exactly kind of the feeling that I had just earlier today, even because I was like, I mean, I guess I could be completely candid here. Is girlfriend / brother were inviting me out, and I was like, oh, I gotta, because I'm going to be basically while I'm in transit for the deployment, there's going to be like a stretch of a month, right, where I can't really film or upload videos. So I was like, I got to upload and schedule 12 videos between now and leaving. And I started to think like exactly what you're saying. Like, what is the reason why you're doing this? Like the reason why you said you wanted to do this was to make a good life for you, your family, your girlfriend, hopefully wife one day. And like, if you're neglecting what's here already, like what, you kind of already failed at what your established goal was. Right. So.
Yeah.
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 But,
No, you're 100% right. It's hard to find that balance, man. Like the amount of times I have made my wife and, before we were married, girlfriend cry because I was working on something and I was neglecting her. And, she has been so good. She's been such a trooper and such a good sport. I mean, I don't know of any other woman who would have been on board like let's buy a house together and then rent out 5 of the bedrooms to people we meet on Craigslist. Like I know very few women who would have been on board for that. So my wife has been incredible, and she's been by my side the entire time. She's not once I've made her upset. I've certainly made her cry, but she's not once left or has said well, that's it. This is the last straw. I'm out of here. And now we have a phenomenal relationship. And part of it is we have zero financial stress. But that's only one part of it. But yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough to find that balance. And yeah, but you're right. You're trying to build this thing, and you're in a way you're doing it for you, but you're also doing it for that girlfriend who is upset that you're not hanging out with her today.
yeah.
And I think, I mean, she's going to hopefully be reaping the rewards of it, but it's what we as men, and especially what we as ambitious men have to understand is sometimes all they want from us is our time. They don't want the money. They don't want anything else. I mean, you have a great girlfriend. I have a great wife, and there are women who would appreciate you only for your money, and that's not who you're with. You're with someone who likes you for you and wants your time. And so, yeah, sometimes we got to just do the right thing and give it to them.
Right. Now you've got a great wife, great house, and a great cat. So
I know. Oh, Winnie the cat. She is huge. Well,
Still
Casey,
chilling.
this podcast has been awesome. I really enjoy talking to you. I hope everyone watching got something out of it. Do you have any last thing you want to leave the good people of YouTube? Any last piece of advice or just words of wisdom?
Ooh, parting shots. I think that just in general, my message tends to be that not that certain people or groups of people are better than others, but I do think that certain behaviors are better at achieving certain ends than others. So I think that that's generally my message. If you guys do want to go follow me on the YouTube channel, do that. If not, I will comment on every video that you watch until you do. And yeah.
That is awesome. And he's dead serious. I've seen him every personal finance video that I have seen recently. I see Casey Burns Investing right there, commented on it, which is a great strategy. I mean, you certainly have more followers than I do, so well done. So yeah, we're gonna link Casey's channel in the description below. Casey, it was awesome having you on, and I hope to talk again soon.